Hello and welcome to the MHR podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Alice.
Alice, it's exciting today because we have a very special guest with us.
We do indeed.
And we say that a lot and we mean it every time we do have a guest, but a lot of time our guests are people we know from around the business, giving them our expertise, advantage of working at MHR. But today we actually have a real life person from the world coming in to see us. So James Shorey from Planet Mark. How you doing, James?
I'm doing well, thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Excited to have you. Today we're going to be talking about sustainability. We're going to talk about all things sustainability, but we're going to do it through the lens of the fantastic work that Planet Mark do, the work that we're doing with you, and actually we want to look at why sustainability is so important, and also look at what businesses can do to harness sustainability better and make better choices and decisions and the benefits they can reap from that, right? So, James, without me waffling on forever, would you mind giving us a quick introduction to yourself and Planet Mark?
Yes, so my name's James Shorey. I am the Partnerships Manager at Planet Mark, and I work within the Policy and Partnerships team. A big part of what we do, sustainability being such a new industry, is try and stay ahead of policy and try and work with policymakers and trade organisations, people like that, to make sure that the UK knows what's happening and coming over the horizon, like in policy, yeah.
And actually, Planet Mark have been doing this from the start, really, you were saying. You've been around for a bit in sustainability terms.
Yeah, so we started 11 years ago now in partnership with the Eden Project. So our CEO, Steve Malkin, need to remember his name, and so Tim Smith, who founded the Eden Project, came up with the idea of measuring the carbon footprint of the Eden Project themselves, and then basically realized that they could replicate it for SMEs and large businesses everywhere. So Planet Mark became its own entity 11 years ago, which actually predates the climate accords in Paris, before net zero was even a thing. So yeah, like even though we're only 11 years old, we're actually one of the oldest sustainability certification businesses in the world.
So it's great to get you in. It's great that we work with you. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important for us, because in our experience, we talk about like the world of work every day in terms of things that are affecting businesses. Sustainability is a staple topic for every organisation, but I don't feel like it has been for a huge amount of time. That conversation has got louder and louder. So before we talk more about what we're doing together, it would be really great to get your perspective of, in a nutshell, why do you think sustainability is such an important agenda for businesses and why is it increasing?
Yeah, so I think 11 years ago, like when a business wanted to do sustainability, wanted to be more sustainable, the real only initiative was to do it for the right reasons. They wanted to do it for the moral high ground. They wanted to be a better business, which is great. But 11 years ago, there wasn't really any commercial benefit. Like solar panels are super expensive. We don't have the electric vehicles we do now. And there was no real legal pressure as well. Fast forward to today, there are all kinds of policies that large and small companies have to align with, and there are tons of commercial benefits and risks if you don't adopt sustainability now. So fast forward, to today, it's really hot on the agenda, and you find a lot of businesses like realizing that they probably should have started a couple of years ago, if not today.
Yeah. So with sustainability, kind of bring it to MHR, it is one of our core values. So
Great.
It's integrated in, all our work streams, kind of within our values as a business. So we're very proud that obviously we are now Planet Mark certified.
Congrats, yeah.
I guess it would be interesting to kind of, if you could explain a little bit more about what that partnership looks like with MHR.
Yes, so Planet Mark certification is a badge of achievement that you have made the first steps to becoming a more sustainable business. So every sustainability journey starts with measurement, like measuring your carbon footprint, because you can't really manage what you don't measure. So if you don't know where your emission hotspots are highest, then you don't know what to focus on. So what MHR have done is you've actually made the first steps and actually done a carbon footprint report. So you can now start actually going through that and figuring out like, oh, our waste is super high. I don't actually know if your waste is super high, but like certain areas are super high. That's where we need to focus our efforts so you can be really strategic about how you reduce your emissions. And importantly, with Planet Mark certification, there's an actual target associated with that. So you've done your emissions report for this year, but next year you're going to have to reduce by at least 5% and 5% after that. So you are actually committed to reducing your carbon, not just measuring it.
I see. So the mention of targets then, is there a type of kind of, I guess, partnership that you look for with a customer where they're on a certain journey or time in their journey where they're looking at sustainability, or maybe have quite a variety?
We do have a variety. I think the vast majority of businesses you work with have never done anything before. So they're really like coming to us either because one of their clients is saying, hey, we really need you to like set a target or like reduce your emissions,
Right.
or maybe they just realize that actually we need that competitive advantage, or we just want to do the right thing. So a lot of businesses do come to us and just say like, how do we start, which is great. But equally, we do get a lot of businesses who have done their carbon footprints, might have even started like progressing and reducing their emissions, and they're like, how do I take the next step? How do I get even better? So
Yeah.
it's really anyone. Yeah.
There may be a lot of businesses that are looking at this because, again, growing interest year on year and in making sure. And for businesses of all sizes, it's not just the big global players now, isn't it? All organisations want to make sure they're sustainable.
Yeah.
What would you say to them in terms of like, this is the baseline that you should at least achieve in your sustainability journey? So again, some people might go, well, it's not compulsory, I don't need to. But actually, what should be at least the bare minimum a business should aspire to do in regards to sustainability?
Well, as I said, I think the first thing every business should do is measure their carbon footprint. Like, it unlocks such an interesting aspect, especially in the staff, about like if you actually put a tangible figure on like, this is how much carbon we produce as a company, or even per employee, suddenly it makes it more real. So actually having that carbon footprint suddenly makes businesses realize that, oh, this is the impact we have on the environment, and actually maybe we can do something about it. So measurement is definitely the first point. I would definitely then think about engaging with your staff and maybe with your suppliers and with your clients as well, and then thinking about how you communicate as well, because if you're doing all that work but then maybe not talking about it in the right way, that's when you start having green claims and being accused of greenwashing, which you want to avoid.
Yeah, which has been a hot topic for the last year or so.
Yeah.
We've been a lot more aware of this. When businesses go and work alongside yourself and they try to find the ways to be more sustainable, is that always a top-down approach, or should it be a cultural shift? Should all teams be involved in the contribution to that?
It's actually a conversation I had with your team before this, before we recorded. Like, how do we, because you have your sustainability team, but how do you get the whole company involved? And green champions in different areas of the business can be a really good way of doing that, like making sure every corner of the business has a champion and has a say in what they want to see in the sustainability plan. But then, yes, you're right, there needs to be some exec board level representation as well, and it needs to be written into the policies from top down.
Right.
So I don't know if I gave you an answer. It's
It's
kind
kind
just
of
both.
inside out, though,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's kind of, it's got to be like, obviously, people in more senior positions are going to have the influence to be able to influence people to get that message out. But actually, it's got to be ingrained with the company's culture. But you've got to do that. We've always said when we're talking about culture and we're talking about change, it's about making sure that people have a voice so that can be projected outside in, and that kind of like circle of influence is then activated. But the positions in more senior power have the influence to start that conversation.
100%. One example we came across recently is we work with a lot of cleaning companies who want to become more sustainable and use better materials. So one of the things they did is say, hey, we're going to move away from like the horrible bleach materials and move to something more environmental. But at the end of the day, if the cleaners who are actually using the products on the floors are just chucking that and just buying their own bleach and just using that, then the whole thing comes apart. So you're right, it needs to be not just the people at the top, but everyone else as well.
So speaking of where you've kind of picked up on that example of cleaners, how, I don't want to use the word easy, but is it quite obvious or clear when you are kind of scoping out with a customer where they can be more sustainable? Because I feel like it's quite a big learning that's happened in the past few years, but I think there's a lot of development that is happening and will happen over the years. I just wondered, now that kind of you are in the midst of all these conversations.
Yes. So yeah, once you've done your carbon footprint, you definitely start to unpick the maybe easier wins and the things you can achieve in your short term versus the things that we're not quite sure how we're going to solve this. Hopefully there's a future technology, or maybe we need more money before we do. So it's all about prioritization and figuring out what you can do sooner rather than later. And that kind of underpins the whole idea of when you're on a net zero journey, you create a transition plan with short, medium and long term targets or goals, and yeah, you've got to try and prioritize like what can we achieve today and what might we need to wait a bit before we can achieve. And a big like one of the more straightforward ones is just making sure that you're educating your staff. Like that's making sure everyone's on board, making sure everyone's aware of the journey. That's usually like one of the most important things to start with.
What are the kind of main kind of bottom line objectives then, I suppose? Is it always just to be carbon neutral, or are there other things that businesses should be striving to achieve?
So at Planet Mark, we're very focused on helping our members achieve net zero and align with net zero strategies. There's basically three areas. There's three leading lights when it comes to net zero: science-based targets, the United Nations Race to Zero, and the ISO net zero guidelines as well. So I had to remember that one. Basically, all three of those are very focused on. It's about making reductions.
Okay.
You can buy carbon offsets on the way, but if you're just emitting 100% and then buying 100% worth of carbon credits, you're not really making a difference.
No.
Yeah.
So reducing and then also buying credits at the end or while you're doing it, that's the target. So we always advise all of our members to talk about their net zero journey rather than carbon neutrality.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what are the main benefits that you would communicate to businesses about, one, being certified with Planet Mark, but also becoming carbon neutral, developing the sustainability strategy? What's the business? What are the external and internal benefits to that?
Well, one of the ones that comes up all the time is actually talent retention and like keeping your staff happy. I had a stat which I actually wrote down. Like 79% of millennial employees are loyal to businesses that care about their impact on the environment and on the social level as well. And we're seeing that not just on millennials, but the Gen Zs who are coming into the workforce. Like they really actually care, about who they're working for. It's not, people need to get paid. They need to get paid a decent amount. But actually beyond that, like, am I working for a company that actually makes a good impact in the world? So actually staff retention is a really, really interesting one. Like if you have a Planet Mark certification or a B Corp, like that's a lot of clout when it comes to actually employing the best talent possible and retaining it. There's also the competitive advantage. I was just speaking to some of your bid team earlier, and actually like having the Planet Mark certification really helps. It makes life easier, so you can show people the badge and the report, and like they can see the credentials that have been checked by a third party as well. And then the idea of going on a net zero journey, it's a business transformational journey that you're going on. It's not just about carbon, but you're identifying different inefficiencies in your business. You're identifying ways to improve. So by going through that journey, you actually be a more efficient and probably more financially stable business at the end of it as well. All of which hopefully result in cost savings as well.
Yes, painting a round picture.
So,
I was just wondering, so obviously you're helping over 800 of organisations alongside MHR.
Yep.
For Planet Mark, how are you fitting into that larger sustainability movement?
Yes, so Planet Mark are very much focused on the E side of ESG, the environmental side. Like we're just one of the three pillars of ESG. Like you've got to make sure that your social impact in the world is a positive one, and you're going to make sure that you look after your staff as well as looking after your carbon output into the environment as well. So we are just one part of the wider ESG network. Something we're doing to try and sort of empower the industry, because like I said, it's basically an industry that's only existed for like a couple of decades. And what we realized is we don't actually have a trade organization or like a membership organization for sustainability companies. So we actually started our own called the Carbon Accounting Alliance. So like us and loads of competitors and loads of companies like us, we all get together and basically talk about like, we're all doing amazing work, but like, how can we try and work together to actually make our combined output even better? So that's why we started that trade organization ourselves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So real leaders then in this industry, taking the forefront of things.
Well, I think
take the credit.
No, well, I think we just identified that like we engage with so many trade organizations from like advertising to manufacturing, and we realized we don't have anyone who like talks about our industry or thinks about like the future of our industry. So maybe we should do that.
Yeah, definitely forward thinking,
Yeah.
sure. No, it's really exciting actually being able to kind of find out more about Planet Mark, because I kind of mentioned before we started recording that kind of I was right at the beginning where I was kind of scoping out the types of businesses that we can partner with, but hearing more about kind of what you're doing and how you're helping other organisations, it's really painting that kind of image of how you do kind of go in and you can, I guess, in some ways, kind of that competitive advantage that companies can have, but also bring to light the different ways that they can do it as well. It sounds like there's endless in terms of kind of possibilities and the advantage of sustainability in a business.
Yeah, and I think people start sustainability journeys for different reasons. And again, I was talking to some of your colleagues before this, and there are definitely companies who start sustainability journeys just because they need to win extra points on a tender, or they
Right.
just have a client or a supplier who's like, oh, can you do this? We'll give you more money if you do it. And it's always good to see people start journeys, no matter what the reasons. But I think for a lot of people who maybe fall under that bracket, they quickly realize that actually there are a lot more benefits than just winning more business. Like they can actually, retain talent. They can actually just have a better impact, a better relationship with their community. And then suddenly, I think there's a lot more converts if the people do start that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame that some business might come and go, well, that's an added bonus. It's like,
Yeah.
well, no, it's why you should have been doing it in the first place.
Yes.
But, no, brilliant. What advice would you give then? So my last question to you. We obviously work with you as a sustainable vendor. We've reaped the benefits. It's helped us learn more about ourselves as an organisation and what we can do. What advice would you give to other businesses who are looking to work with vendors to improve their sustainability? What should they do?
Well, I mentioned the measurement
Yep.
before, so definitely just making sure that you've measured and understand your emissions, because that's basically half the battle. But then just try and work with other businesses, like-minded businesses, who are also on sustainability journeys, because actually the nature of Scope 1 and 2 and Scope 3 means that you've got to be either careful with who you work with, or if there's someone who's not on a sustainability journey, help them start. Because actually this is something where businesses can't do this alone. You need to work with your entire community, trade organizations, local community as well, and then it makes the whole thing easier.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
James, thank you for answering our questions over and over again. It's been brilliant. Obviously, we have a great relationship with you. It's great to see the work of over 2 years of us working with you to get where we are kind of come to fruition. So I really appreciate you explained that.
Great.
Hopefully, businesses listening have learned more about kind of the impact of sustainability and why they should be considering these measures. Of course, if you want to find out more about the work that Planet Mark do, we'll provide a link in the podcast description. You can find out more about the work that we do with you guys. So thank you for coming in and spending the time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Until then, next week we'll be talking about something else, I'm sure, but you'll have to come back and listen. Until then, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.